Hi, this is Jacob with Old Deli Music. I'm just going to talk about uh, sticking keys on deli-style harmonium, what can be the causes, and a couple of quick fixes to remedy those causes. So on this harmonium, we have this D key sticking down, not coming back up properly, and this is the most frequent cause. I'm going to set that piece to the side and go ahead and remove these screws so that I can demonstrate this here. The most frequent cause of sticking keys is what we have going on right here, which is that it is rubbing against the key next to it along this surface here, and it can be either along this part of the key or along this part in front, or both. And you can just remove the key as I just did by setting the tip of that little spring to the side, and you can lift the key out. Now, one remedy for this is to actually just remove some material from where it appears to be rubbing on the key next to it. So here and here, take a close look at it, see where it appears to be rubbing, and then I'm going to take some pretty gritty sandpaper. This is 120, and something along that in that range will do fine. And I can sand and remove some material from that side of the key to keep it from rubbing. Now, if you do that, you want to be careful to put pressure along this portion of the key so that you're not rounding the corners, because you'll end up rounding the corners, and it can make it'll do the job, but it'll make this kind of unsightly if the corners are getting rounded off. So put pressure kind of right here so that you're pressing down in this area of the key and remove material that way. I actually like to use a flat file for this, and if you're on that whole plane of the key, then it tends to remove material pretty evenly. And you can do that and put it back and test it until you see that the key is no longer sticking. This key actually, and this will happen over time, it appears, if I look down it like this in the sight line, I can see that it appears to just be bending slightly this way. So it's bending a little bit toward the key next to it. In that case, you might have to remove a little more material. You might have to sand it down a bunch. The other thing that you can do is, you can see these little posts at the back of the key mechanism in the harmonium. These little guideposts here, and there's a little notch at the back of each key. This keeps it in place. If I want to make this key move slightly in this direction so that it's not rubbing on this key next to it here, I can actually nudge this little post in the opposite direction. So just bending it slightly in that direction so that the key is moving like this. And now it appears to be moving a little better. I would still probably sand that a little more in the front. It's still pretty close here, but it's still moving freely, and that appears to have done the job. So that's the first cause, and a couple of ways that you can remedy it. Another frequent cause of keys sticking is when this piece here is too tightly screwed in, and so the fronts of the keys are actually rubbing against this piece of wood right here. And this often happens like if you have a few keys in a row that are sticking. It may be that this part is actually rubbing against this wood, and so you should be able to just loosen these screws a little bit, back this piece off, and then those keys will start to move freely again. This piece is actually resting against these two end pieces typically, and so it may be necessary to kind of put a little padding in between this piece and where this piece is resting up against the end there, in order to just space it out a little bit. Sometimes we'll do that. But typically it's, you know, it's only pressing in a little bit against the keys, and so a little adjustment will go a long way in terms of freeing up the keys if they're rubbing against the front of this piece here. A further cause of keys sticking, and typically it would just be the end keys here, is if this piece, if the key is too close to this end piece here, like this key is sticking right now. And on this harmonium, actually, this end piece is just a little bit too big. That's pretty unusual, and so that's something that we would always remedy in the shop here before sending this harmonium out. But typically the remedy is just to nudge this piece toward the side a little bit and away from the key. There's a screw here that keeps this piece in place, so if you loosen that screw and then push the piece over a bit to where you'd like it positioned and then retighten that screw, that will typically resolve that issue if that's the cause of the key sticking. And there might be a couple other odd instances, but the last one that's fairly ordinary in terms of causing a key to stick will be that this little notch at the back of the key, where it fits around that little guidepost there, is just a little too tight, and so the key can be sticking in that little track there. The remedy for that is to again take your sandpaper and just sand out this little notch just a tiny bit. You can actually fold it like so and fit it in there and sand like that, and that will remedy that problem. You don't want to sand it out too much, or else there'll be too much play in the key and it'll wobble, but typically just a little bit of sanding will remedy that problem. So those are some common causes of what may cause a key to stick on a deli style harmonium, and some easy fixes. If you have any harmonium questions, you can find us at Old Deli Music on our YouTube channel, or at olddelimusic@gmail.com. Thanks.